On the Autocar show today, we drive the Jaguar F-Pace, Volvo's S60 Cross Country and ride the Honda Navi.
Well, it's hello from Montenegro for this bit of the Autocar show. Now, this is a small Southeast European country which has beautiful views, as you can see, and great roads, so perfect for test driving Jaguar's newborn, the F-Pace. And I can really say newborn because this is Jaguar's first foray into the segment of SUV or crossover, as you may call it. And that's probably because sister company Land Rover always occupied that terrain. Well, they say it's going to be entirely different. It's going to speak the language of Jaguar. What we have to find out is, does it? I picked the two engines that will be coming to India, the 2-litre Ingenium diesel and the 3-litre V6 diesel. As I settle into the 2-litre to begin with, the high and long bonnet makes me a little wary and I feel the size of this larger Jag. But soon I'm winding my way into corner after corner, feeling more and more at ease. It's just that the performance isn't exciting me just yet. I'm in the 2-litre now, and this one does the job, but as you can hear, it really toils at it and you can hear it at most times. It's happy to amble around, and as long as you're using it at path throttle, it's fine. It's when you put your foot down for more that you find it a little lacking. This engine comes with only 180 HP, and it's noticeable especially on gradients. The gearbox is constantly shifting down gears, running the engine up the revs, and you hear it at work most of the time. The spread of torque starts pretty low, so you're better off using the throttle lightly and driving it in a relaxed manner. Jaguar have probably chosen this state of tune to get the efficiency numbers. Now don't get me wrong, the 2-litre never struggles at all. It will get up to triple-digit speeds easily, just in a very linear, matter-of-fact manner. I decide I need to find out if the 3-litre will offer up more excitement value, and I change over. It doesn't disappoint me. This 3-litre engine is just so effortless. It puts a smile on your face almost instantly. You can extend your foot wherever you want in the range, and it just belches out this huge wave of torque that you can ride on endlessly. The figures are impressive, and it gets up to the 100 mark in just 6.2 seconds. And it does that without a sound in a really buttery smooth manner. I often don't realize just how quick I'm going, and the corners come up in a flash as I wind my way up the hill. I'm enthralled by the way the F-Pace is keeping me engaged. The F-Pace is just so happy carving corners. The nose dives in eagerly, and the perfectly balanced body just follows through cleanly. Changes of direction come absolutely effortlessly, and on these twisty, windy sections of road, it's like a mountain goat. It's just so perfectly at home. Now I'm really excited. This 3-litre is better at delivering the thrill factor. So this 8-speed gearbox works really well with this engine. Swaps cogs seamlessly and quickly. You never really need to use the paddles. But should you want to get a little bit more out of that drive, use the paddles and the shifts come up instantly. The unfettered manner in which the F-Pace keeps pace with all I ask of it is what's astounding. It's keeping me absolutely involved. And it's been fun, but now I want to go back to the 2-litre engine again and take in the differences, because I feel this is the more important one for India and it's time to go back. Now when you get back into the 2-litre after driving the 3-litre, the gap in power is even more yawning, and that definitely is the more thrilling one to drive. I feel like, where's that extra litre when I need it? But to be fair, it's because I'm expecting a sporty Jag. The 2-litre works well for the most, and the dynamics are enough to excite even without the additional power. Now this electric power assisted steering is really quite incredible. Small deflections bring about reactions and it feels quite accurate and sharp. Makes you feel very connected to the road. The light aluminium body, the stiff chassis and the 4-wheel drive system deliver oodles of grip and ensure that the F-Pace will offer you enough to excite. In fact, the 2-litre engine being a little lighter feels even more eager around the corners. Now you have different driving modes, and in normal it feels good enough, but of course you can also select dynamic, where you can actually set it to an individual setting to figure, whether you want the gearbox to react quicker, the engine, the suspension or the steering, or then all of them. And knowing me, I'm the one that likes everything working quicker. And when it is in dynamic mode, this car is just even more thrilling to drive. And of course there is the all-terrain mode too, and we decide to try our hand at a spot of off-roading to see if this is truly an SUV. The F-Pace proves itself there too, and it can clamber up and down grassy knolls and over a fair amount of rough stuff. You just don't have to worry about what's underneath. So it's proven itself fairly well from behind the wheel, but the true test in India will be from the back seat. Well, this is the space that most people are going to be sitting in India, the back seat. I own a Q5 and I can definitely tell you there's more legroom in here than in the Q5. So as far as comfort goes, this one definitely scores high. The F-Pace has a wheelbase that's larger than its competition, and that happened thanks to keeping true to Ian Callum's design language. Not only has it helped with the dynamics, but it's opened up more room inside, and the rear seat with its rectangular windows and panoramic sunroof feels spacious. What's really great about the F-Pace is the ride handling compromise. Generally when you have a sharp handling car, it's really difficult to get the ride right because there's a certain amount of stiffness. But I think it's been beautifully done here because the F-Pace just smothers the road. It doesn't let you know what's going on under the wheels, and you're absolutely comfortable in this back seat. Now the 2-litre does have a little firmer edge over the sharper road gaps and bumps, but the 3-litre absolutely flattens everything out. It's been an exhilarating time. But now it's time to stop and take stock of what else is on offer. The interior of the F-Pace feels every bit luxury as it should. There's a beautiful double-stitch leather across the top of the dash. There's that cowl that gives it a sporty feeling, which is very familiar to us now. And of course you have this ambient lighting which highlights it, but that you can see once it gets dark. There's a very large touchscreen here, and the system itself has become very evolved. There are some lower-end plastics at the lower half of the dash, and the 2-litre comes with a manual lock to adjust the steering height. But at this time, we don't know what the spec level will be that comes into India. What we do know is that the F-Pace will turn heads. It has all the Jaguar DNA with a long bonnet, short overhang, and the F-type derived taillights. But what makes it special is the way the metal is just so tautly stretched across the body. Small creases create highlights, and its tightly skinned look with a steeply raked front and rear windscreens lend it a sporty air. Yes, it is stunning to look at too. The F-Pace is expected in India in the second half of this year, probably around Diwali. At conceptualization stage, the brief for the F-Pace was really to make a larger, more practical Jag, an SUV or a crossover that was something like the BMW X3 or the Audi Q5. Well, after that came the Macan, and it sent everyone back to the drawing board saying, hey, why can't we make it thrilling to drive? We have that in our DNA. So that's what they did. Here's the F-Pace, and I asked myself at the beginning of the story, does it speak the Jaguar language? Does it have the DNA? And I can say, yes, it definitely does. It's hot to look at. It's luxurious, and it is thrilling to drive. But now it comes with a good dose of practicality. It's got a spacious interior and a big boot. So they did tick off all the boxes they set out to. Does it have what it takes to take on the competition? Well, they're definitely going to have to sit up and take notice and be worried about this Jaguar F-Pace. As for India, price will matter, but since we don't have the prices just yet, to answer your question, should I buy one? It's an emphatic yes, and if you prefer being behind the wheel, then definitely 3 litre over the 2.
Now, Honda knows a thing or two about the scooter market, so it's a really interesting sign of the times that they have considered to make this, the Navi. Now, while the whole world is going gaga about the Navi, I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't be buying a Navi. First and foremost, you won't be able to handle the attention.
In bits and pieces, the Navi looks quite odd, like the chunky headlamp, the chromed handlebars that rise high. There's a small tank and the one-piece plastic panels that make up the entire side. And well, there's that round exhaust poking out at the side. And when you put it all together, you get something unconventional, loud, and a bit comical. The question is, can you pull it off?
Well, scooters are about practicality, and well, the Navi, well, you could argue that it isn't a scooter, but clearly practicality is not very high on its list. Storage? Well, there. I mean, usually you'd be able to hang a bag in a scooter. And under seat, yeah, the seat opens up and it has storage like as much you would have on a motorcycle. So, in terms of storage, this is really not on par with a scooter. And then, of course, on top of that, there's a little less flexibility. Normally, let's say your girlfriend or your wife would be able to get onto it with a skirt on, but here, not really.
For taller riders, the Navi might be a bit cramped. Also, the 3.8-litre fuel tank is a bit small, even by scooter standards. And let's not forget the handle lock on the Navi is like on the bikes from the 80s, down by the steering column. You could also complain that the paint could be more lustrous.
Now the Navi costs 10,000 bucks less than an Activa. And why not? I mean, look at the plastics. The shroud for the fuel filler cap looks quite flimsy. The speedometer, it's quite bland actually. It looks quite dated. And yeah, sure, it's got telescopic forks at the front, but on the whole, feels less of a scooter. So, you shouldn't buy a Navi. Wrong. You should buy a Navi, and here's why. Firstly, it looks small, so it makes it feel fun, but at the same time, it's really not all that small. The seat height is the same as an Activa. Ground clearance, a little bit more than an Activa. The wheelbase, bigger than an Activa. This is a new chassis, and you can feel it.
Yes, that means it is as big as a regular scooter and a little bit bigger in some ways, which means sitting with a pillion will be fairly comfortable. Despite this, the Navi is 7 kilograms lighter than an Activa, so don't be surprised if it gets a little bit more punch out of the 8 horsepower than the Activa does. Unsurprisingly, the Navi felt quite peppy to ride. When it comes to the top speed, Honda claims 81 kilometers an hour for the Navi, which is 1 kilometer per hour less than the Activa.
The strange thing about riding around the Navi is you actually start thinking of it as a motorcycle. So when you're slowing down, I was actually tapping my right foot looking for the foot brake to slow it down. And every now and then you'd be looking for a gear as well. But at the same time, you have the convenience of that CVT, so it's really fun and that engine feels peppy.
The 1286mm wheelbase is long, and the Navi boasts of a 12-inch front wheel. And when both things combine, a different dimension of fun is added to the proceedings.
I was genuinely surprised with how the Navi went around the corners because it just felt planted. Scooters tend to feel a bit twitchy or nervous, but this was just feeling very comfortable. Sure, still no motorcycle, but with that telescopic fork, the longer wheelbase, the nice MRF rubber, it was a lot of fun to even throw around corners.
The suspension also felt quite adept at soaking up bumps. It was pliant enough. But with limited travel, it'll be best to skirt around large potholes on the street. but you will be able to make your way around stuff quite easily because the Navi feels oh so small and so light. It feels like an extension of you.
The thing about the Navi is it feels very natural, and so you just don't want to hop off it. And I found myself not wanting to hop off it for a lot of things.
For instance, when I felt hungry, yeah. Sadly, food wasn't easy to come by in a yet-to-open amusement park. And when nature called, well, the Navi proved that it has an excellent turning radius and is very easy to ride in cramped spaces. A perfect device for urban transport. So the Navi has strayed off the sensible and utilitarian path followed by most scooters in its price range. It stayed away from being too serious and stayed like other motorcycles in this price range. And at about 40,000 rupees ex-showroom Delhi, the Navi manages to deliver a combination of decent usability, wide appeal, and a big dose of fun in a funky but affordable little package.
Just think about it, the majority of scooters on sale in the market today are about being generic, about being fairly bland and working for a wide audience. The Navi is pretty much the opposite of that. It stands out, it makes you think whether it's right for you or not. And once you hop onto the saddle and experience what it offers in terms of the experience, which is a lot of fun, I think you'd be happy to overlook its shortcomings on the logical, practical front. I think as a deal, the Navi, once you experience it, is going to seal the case for you.
I'd like to talk to you about crossovers. As we know it right now, a crossover is a pseudo SUV that isn't quite as good off-road as a proper 4x4, but it looks rugged and it tends to be easier to live with as well. However, a crossover can actually be any combination of two contradicting ideas. And we've had plenty of them over the years. We've had crossover estates, we've had crossover MPVs, and of course we've had our fair share of crossover hatchbacks. But a crossover sedan? That doesn't sound like an idea that could work, right? Well, Volvo doesn't think so, and that's why we have this, the S60 Cross Country. What it is an S60 sedan that's standing on its toes. Its suspension has been raised and now the ground clearance is a whopping 201 millimeters. That's more than any of the compact luxury SUVs. Normally, a sedan riding so high would look pretty awkward, but thanks to the cross-country treatment, black cladding on the wheel arches, silver scuff plates, and a big honeycomb grille, it actually looks rather cool and menacing. Getting in is actually a bit easier as the seats aren't as low down as before. And once you do, you'll notice that not a lot has changed. So from the driver's seat, there's no real way to tell that you are in the cross-country variant of the S60. There are certainly no signs around the cabin, which looks almost identical to the standard car. That's a bit disappointing actually. It's luxurious enough, but we'd have liked to see a few more rugged touches to go with the exterior. Also, the S60 cabin in general is starting to show its age now, and things like the infotainment system feel a notch behind the competition. Even the driving position. I know that I am a fair bit higher off the ground than in the normal car, but you just don't feel it from behind the wheel. In fact, the driving experience is so similar to the standard sedan that you forget that you have 200 millimeters of ground clearance protecting you from the roughness of the road. You really do have to remind yourself that you can just hammer this car over any surface with reckless abandon. In fact, Volvo says it's designed for owners who live in the city but sometimes have to drive out of town over rough roads to their factory or their country house. But how does it feel going over the rough stuff? And as you can imagine, that has had an effect on ride quality. So the suspension does feel a little bit firm overall, but the good news is that it has a nice soft edge to it. It rounds off sharp edges really well, and it also stays really flat when you're going at high speeds. All in all, a superbly judged ride. You can thank the new 18-inch wheels and their chunky tires for that, but the other issue with race suspension is that it usually compromises the car's dynamics. So in the handling department, like the standard S60, this one isn't really all that thrilling. But it does have a key trick up its sleeve, and that is all-wheel drive. Yes, the Cross Country comes as standard with all-wheel drive, and though that doesn't really add to the thrills anymore, it does make it really grippy and confidence-inspiring. You can even feel the all-wheel drive kick in to pull you back into line sometimes. And while this doesn't transform the Cross Country into some sort of rally car, it does give you a good feeling of security around bends. Now the engine in this car is a familiar one. It's the 2.4-litre 5-cylinder diesel engine. But we would have liked if Volvo had introduced the new 2-litre 4-cylinder Drive E motor you get in the standard car. Still, this one has a very linear power delivery and has a lot of torque on tap, even though it's not very punchy. So it can really build speed quite fast indeed. With 0 to 100 in 8.2 seconds, it's not shabby at all. It's just that it doesn't feel exciting. For most owners, however, the power from this 190 horsepower motor will be more than enough to get them by. So the Volvo S60 Cross Country is a left field idea that on paper doesn't seem like it could ever work. In reality, however, it just does. It combines the prestige Indian people associate with a sedan with the ruggedness they just love in an SUV. It's also as comfortable and luxurious as you'd expect from an S60, while also letting you drive over the worst of Indian roads without a care in the world. It really stretches the definition of the word crossover, and in execution, it truly is the best of both worlds.